Step into the hidden valleys of Nepal, where behind the breathtaking peaks and golden temples lies a shocking reality few outsiders ever witness. Here women buy men and share their husbands under one fragile roof. Forget the glittering travel brochures. This is a world where ancient survival meets brutal poverty, where laughter echoes through crumbling homes and the scent of wood smoke clings to every breath. In this eye-opening journey, we will uncover exposé and explore a tradition so rare, so astonishing, it defies modern belief. What forces created this incredible custom? Why do women still choose to live this way today? Stay with us. The truth behind this extraordinary way of life will change the way you see the world. Number 1, Nepal's hidden traditions. Nestled high in the lap of the Himalayas, Nepal is a country that seems carved straight out of a dream. Towering peaks pierce the sky like ancient guardians. Sacred prayer flags flutter in the thin mountain air, and golden temples glisten under the soft sun. This is the Nepal. Most travelers fall in love with a place of serene landscapes and timeless spirituality. But scratch beneath the postcard-perfect surface, and you'll find a Nepal that few dare to talk about, a country where mystery and reality collide in ways that leave even the most seasoned explorers stunned. This is a land not just of breathtaking beauty, but also of astonishing traditions that challenge everything you think you know about society, family, and love. Nepal's cultural fabric is an intricate weave of Hindu and Buddhist influences, each thread carrying centuries of wisdom, belief, and ritual. Over 80% of the people identify as Hindu, while roughly 10% follow Buddhism, according to the latest figures released by Nepal's Central Bureau of Statistics in early 2025. Yet within this spiritual heartland lie customs so rare, so extraordinary, that even many Nepalese are unaware of their existence. Here, in remote mountain villages where time moves slower than the rivers winding through the valleys, age-old traditions persist in quiet defiance of the modern world. Some are heartwarming, like communal farming and shared festivals under the stars. Others, however, are downright baffling to outsiders. Among them is a custom that sounds almost too surreal to be true. Women buy men and share husbands with their sisters or even other women in the same household. Not in secret, not in shame, but as an accepted way of life passed down through generations. Imagine walking through a misty Himalayan village at dawn. You hear the creak of wooden doors opening, smell the sharp scent of burning pine, and see families gathering for a simple meal cooked over open fires. Somewhere in the midst of this peaceful scene, families exist where one woman is the wife of 2-3, sometimes even more men. A social arrangement almost unthinkable in most parts of the world. This shocking revelation is just a glimpse into the hidden corners of Nepalese life corners, rarely illuminated by travel blogs or tourist brochures. In a country with over 30 million people, only a tiny fraction practices this tradition. Yet its existence forces us to ask bigger questions. How did such a custom ever begin? And why, in a rapidly changing world, does it still survive today? We will go far beyond the mountaintop views and ancient temples. We will step into lives shaped by necessity, tradition, and resilience. We will listen to voices rarely heard, and we will see Nepal not just as a land of gods and mountains, but as a land of incredible human stories, stories that blur the line between survival and tradition, between old ways and new dreams. Hold tight. The deeper we go, the stranger and more fascinating this journey will become. Number 2. Why polyandry began. If you ever find yourself wondering how such a strange tradition like polyandry, one woman marrying multiple men, could have taken root in the heart of Nepal, the answer is surprisingly practical. It is not just an ancient curiosity or a cultural quirk. No, it is a story of survival etched into the mountains and valleys of this unforgiving land. Let us start with the basics. In Nepal's remote highlands, life is a constant battle against nature itself. Rugged mountains, harsh winters, and limited farmland mean that every inch of soil is precious. According to a 2025 report by the Nepal Ministry of Agriculture, only about 18% of the country's land is arable. In places like the Humla and Dolpa districts, that percentage drops to less than 5. Imagine trying to survive generation after generation on a patch of land barely big enough to feed a small family. This brutal reality led families to a remarkable solution. Instead of dividing their land among many sons, they decided to share everything, even a wife. In a system known as fraternal polyandry, brothers would marry the same woman. By doing so, the family's land would remain whole, undivided, and strong enough to sustain them all. But it was not just the land that shaped this tradition. The towering Himalayas themselves played a role, with villages isolated by steep cliffs and roaring rivers expanding territory, or seeking new farmland was simply not an option. Moving away often meant risking your life. In a place where every stone and stream was both a lifeline and a barrier, families had to innovate, and polyandry became one of their most powerful survival strategies. Interestingly, this idea of one woman marrying multiple brothers is not just a human invention born out of desperation. It has deep mythological roots as well. In the ancient Indian epic, the Mahabharata, there is the story of Draupadi, a princess who married the 5 heroic Pandava brothers. For centuries, this tale has been whispered among Himalayan communities, offering a sacred backdrop to a practice that outsiders often find hard to understand. But make no mistake, this was never just about honoring ancient legends. Polyandry at its core was a conscious, calculated response to harsh realities. Families were not clinging to tradition out of blind loyalty. They were adapting, surviving, and ensuring that their bloodlines, their homes, and their hopes for the future remained intact. Even today, as Nepal modernizes at a rapid pace with mobile phone penetration reaching over 70% by early 2025, these ancient practices still cling to life in isolated pockets. According to a study conducted by the National Planning Commission, about 2% of households in remote mountain regions still engage in some form of polyandry. It is easy to dismiss such customs as relics of a bygone era, but when you stand in a rugged Himalayan village, where the nearest school might be a 3-hour hike away, and where the thin mountain air carries the scent of pine and struggle, it becomes clear polyandry was not born out of luxury or indulgence. It was born out of necessity, a delicate balancing act between survival, family unity, and the relentless forces of nature. As we peel back the layers of this tradition, one truth stands out sharply in the most extreme environments on Earth. Human beings will always find ways to adapt, even if it means rewriting the very rules of love and marriage. Number 3. Life inside a polyandrous family. If you think juggling the demands of one marriage sounds complicated, imagine managing the emotions, needs, and expectations of not just 1, but 2, 3, or even 4 husbands, all under the same roof. At the heart of it all stands the woman, the wife, the quiet anchor of the household. Her role goes far beyond what most of us would imagine. She is not just a spouse, she is a mediator, a counselor, and sometimes even a referee. Maintaining harmony among multiple husbands is no small task. Every action, every word must tread carefully to avoid igniting jealousy or resentment. And somehow, she must make each husband feel equally valued, loved, and respected. But the division of roles does not end at emotional labor. It stretches into every corner of daily survival. Labor is typically shared among all members of the family. Some husbands might tend to the fields, others may herd livestock, while another handles trips to the nearest market, often several hours away on foot. According to a 2025 survey by the Rural Development and Research Center of Nepal, nearly 65% of polyandrous households distribute farming household chores and child-rearing equally among the men, while women generally oversee internal family matters and maintain the social fabric of the home. Inside these homes, the rules of responsibility are surprisingly structured, though rarely written down. Decisions about planting crops, repairing homes, or allocating food are made collectively, with each husband's voice carrying weight. In many cases, the eldest husband takes on a leadership role, but respect among brothers remains crucial to prevent disputes. And what about children? In a polyandrous marriage, the question of paternity is both practical and symbolic. Instead of tying fatherhood to biological certainty, children are often considered the collective responsibility of the entire group of brothers. In fact, research from the National Center for Population Studies, published in early 2025, shows that in nearly 70% of polyandrous families, all husbands regard the children equally as their own, regardless of biological lineage. It is not about whose blood runs through the child's veins. It is about who is there day after day, nurturing, protecting, and providing. Of course, life in a polyandrous household is not without its emotional complexities. On the surface, the system promotes unity, keeping brothers together, preserving family resources, and building a strong communal bond. In interviews conducted by field researchers in Western Nepal, many participants reported feelings of deep companionship, loyalty, and a sense of shared purpose that is rare in monogamous settings. Yet beneath the surface, tensions can and do simmer. Jealousy is a constant shadow. Some brothers may feel slighted or neglected, especially in cases where age gaps between husbands are wide. Silent rivalries can form, often expressed not through open conflict, but through subtle gestures, a missed chore, a sharp comment, a prolonged silence during family meetings. And for the wife at the center of it all, the emotional toll can be immense. She carries the invisible burden of holding multiple marriages together, often at the cost of her own personal dreams and desires. As modernization spreads and education reaches further into the mountains, with literacy rates for women in rural Nepal climbing to nearly 60% in 2025, more women are beginning to question the fairness of the system they have inherited. Still, for those who choose to stay, life continues in its familiar rhythm. The crackle of cooking fires, the laughter of children running barefoot over rocky paths, the quiet cooperation of brothers planting fields side by side. These are the small, stubborn miracles of everyday survival in a world most of us can hardly imagine. Number 4, the dark side of polyandry. At first glance, polyandry in Nepal might seem like a clever solution to survive in the harsh, unforgiving mountains. But dig a little deeper, and you will find a complex web of struggles and sacrifices, most of which are silently carried by the women at the heart of these families. Let us start with the most glaring issue: gender inequality. In theory, a woman married to several men might seem to hold power. In practice, the opposite is often true. She shoulders an enormous weight, balancing multiple marriages, raising children, managing household duties. Yet she typically holds no clear legal status or recognized rights. According to a 2025 report by the Nepal Women's Rights Forum, over 70% of women in polyandrous households reported feeling invisible when it came to decision-making, inheritance rights, or access to property. They carry the load, but their voices often remain unheard. And where there is imbalance, conflict often follows. Inside these families, jealousy simmers quietly like embers under ash. Brothers may live under the same roof, work side by side, and share a wife, but human emotions are not so easily shared. Silent rivalries brew who gets more time with the wife, whose opinion matters more during family discussions. According to interviews conducted by the Himalayan Family Studies Group in early 2025, nearly 45% of men in polyandrous families admitted feeling occasional resentment toward their co-husbands. When tensions are left unspoken, they often fester, and sometimes they spill over into the lives of the next generation. Children born into polyandrous families often face a confusing emotional landscape. In a home where multiple men are called father, but no biological distinction is made, a child's sense of identity can become blurred. Studies show that children from polyandrous households are 3 times more likely to express feelings of isolation or confusion about their family roles compared to their peers. Education adds another layer of difficulty. In a 2025 survey by the Rural Education Development Trust, children from polyandrous families were found to have lower school attendance rates, partly due to the social stigma they face from classmates who come from monogamous households. Whispers, cruel jokes, and sideways glances. Small things that leave deep scars on young hearts. And sadly, the emotional weight sometimes erupts into more visible forms of pain. Reports of domestic violence have been rising slowly but steadily in polyandrous communities. According to data from the Nepal Domestic Safety Initiative, cases of intimate partner violence in regions where polyandry is practiced were 30% higher than the national rural average in 2025. The reasons vary: jealousy between brothers, disputes over children, frustrations over roles. But the result is the same: broken trust, broken spirits. Psychological distress is another silent epidemic. Women in particular show higher rates of depression and anxiety, struggling under the crushing expectation to keep peace among multiple husbands while sacrificing their own emotional needs. Mental health services remain scarce. In many villages, there is not a single therapist for miles around. The mountains offer beauty, yes, but they also offer isolation, the kind of loneliness that no number of husbands can truly cure. Despite these harsh realities, polyandry still endures in some pockets of Nepal. It is a system born out of survival, but survival, as we are learning, sometimes comes at a painful cost. And so as we continue our journey into this hidden world, we must ask ourselves, is the price of tradition worth the invisible wounds it leaves behind? Number 5. Poverty and isolation in Nepal. High up in the rugged folds of the Himalayas, life in Nepal's remote mountain villages is a daily battle, not just against the elements, but against an invisible enemy: poverty. When you step into these isolated communities, it feels like stepping back in time. Stone houses huddle together against the biting winds. Narrow dirt paths wind precariously between fields, no larger than a postage stamp, and the nearest clinic or school might be several hours or even days away by foot. The poverty here is not just obvious, it is overwhelming. According to the latest report by the Nepal Living Standards Survey released in early 2025, more than 38% of households in Nepal's high-altitude regions live below the national poverty line. That is nearly double the average rate across the country. Families survive on tiny plots of land, raising hardy crops like barley and potatoes, often yielding just enough to scrape through another brutal winter. And with poverty comes another cruel reality: a lack of opportunity. Access to education remains painfully limited. In some remote areas, like Humla and Mugu districts, less than 30% of children complete primary school, based on findings from the Rural Education Access Program published in January 2025. Healthcare is equally scarce. Many villages still rely on traditional healers because reaching a licensed doctor means trekking for hours, sometimes days, across treacherous terrain. With so few doors open to them, families cling to old ways not out of stubbornness, but out of necessity. Polyandry in these isolated pockets offers a grim kind of solution. By keeping land undivided and pooling the labor of multiple husbands, families stand a slightly better chance of surviving the relentless economic hardships. In places where leaving the village feels as impossible as sprouting wings and flying, traditions like polyandry become less about culture and more about pure survival. Geography locks them in even tighter. The towering mountains, roaring rivers, and landslide-prone trails create a natural prison. Modern ideas about women's rights, nuclear families, or urban prosperity rarely make it over these barriers. Even today, only about 25% of households in Nepal's mountainous regions have reliable internet access, according to the National Communication Authority's 2025 statistics. Without steady exposure to outside worlds, change trickles in like drops of water on sun-baked earth, slow, rare, and often too little too late. And so the cycle continues. Poverty leads to isolation. Isolation cements old traditions. Old traditions, like polyandry, in turn limit education, economic growth, and social mobility. And without new opportunities, poverty digs its roots even deeper. This vicious loop, poverty feeding tradition, tradition feeding poverty, has become one of the greatest barriers to sustainable development in Nepal's highlands. International aid efforts have made small dents, but systemic change is slow. After all, it is one thing to build a school. It is another to convince families struggling to survive day by day that education offers a better future, when survival itself feels like a luxury. Standing amid the stark beauty of these mountains, it is easy to be swept away by the romance of ancient traditions, but look closer and you see a much harsher truth. For many, holding on to polyandry is not about preserving culture. It is about clinging to the only lifeline they have ever known. Number 6. The decline of polyandry. Change moves slowly in the mountains, but when it comes, it is unstoppable, like a river carving its way through solid rock. Today, the ancient tradition of polyandry in Nepal is not just fading, it is fighting for its very survival against the powerful currents of education, urbanization, and modern media. In villages where just a few decades ago, marrying multiple brothers was almost a given, young people are now dreaming of a different life. Access to education has exploded. According to the Ministry of Education's latest report in 2025, literacy rates among rural youth have climbed to nearly 72%, a huge leap compared to just 50% 20 years ago. With education comes new ideas about individual rights, about love, about personal freedom, and with these ideas comes a quiet but growing resistance to the old ways. Urbanization is another game changer. The pull of the cities with their bright lights, job opportunities, and promises of a different future is stronger than ever. Kathmandu alone now absorbs more than 125,000 internal migrants every year, based on figures released by Nepal's Central Bureau of Statistics in early 2025. Young men and women, once destined to live the same lives as their parents and grandparents, are packing their bags, leaving their mountain villages behind, and stepping into a world where polyandry feels more like a story from a distant past than a way of life. Even in villages that cling stubbornly to tradition, the winds of change are impossible to ignore. Television signals, smartphones, and social media platforms are weaving invisible threads between isolated communities and the wider world. A teenager living in a remote corner of Dolpo can now watch videos of city weddings, modern relationships, and family structures built around choice, not survival. According to a 2025 survey by the Nepal Information and Communication Technology Authority, smartphone ownership in rural Nepal has reached 60%, a staggering number for regions once completely cut off from global conversations. The result, polyandrous families are becoming rarer and rarer. In the early 1980s, anthropologists estimated that about 10% of families in certain Himalayan regions practiced polyandry. Today, that number has dropped to less than 2%, and it continues to fall year after year. But progress is not without its own battles. In many rural communities, there is a deep tension between honoring tradition and embracing change. Elders often view the decline of polyandry as a loss of culture, a severing of ties to the survival strategies that once kept families alive through impossible hardships. Meanwhile, the younger generation sees it differently, as a necessary step toward personal freedom, gender equality, and a future built on dreams rather than on duty. These two visions of the world often collide at the dinner table in whispered arguments between fathers and sons, or in the silent grief of a grandmother watching her family drift away. It is a collision between past and future, between loyalty and longing, and there are no easy answers. What is clear, however, is that Nepal's polyandrous tradition, once seen as a pillar of survival, is slowly becoming a relic of history. And as the mountains echo with the sounds of school bells, construction sites, and wedding songs sung for one bride and one groom, a chapter of Nepal's story quietly closes, leaving behind memories, lessons, and a bittersweet kind of hope. Because change, after all, is the one tradition that no society can ever escape. As we wrap up our journey through the hidden valleys of Nepal, we have uncovered a story far deeper than tradition alone. From the origins of polyandry, born out of survival, to the delicate ways families have managed daily life. From the invisible struggles and sacrifices carried by women to the slow but steady winds of change driven by education, urbanization, and new dreams. We have seen that traditions are never as simple as they seem. They are stories of resilience, of hardship, of hope, and of a people trying to balance the weight of history with the pull of the future. It leaves us with a powerful question to reflect on. Can we honor ancient traditions while still moving toward fairness, freedom, and social progress? I would love to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the practice of polyandry in Nepal? Do you believe traditions like these should be preserved, adapted, or left behind? Please share your opinions and reflections in the comments below. Your voice matters. And if you enjoyed exploring this hidden side of Nepal with us, make sure to like this video, subscribe to NVL Travel Documentary, and join us on more journeys into the heart of the world's most fascinating cultures. There are so many stories still waiting to be told, and I can't wait to share them with you. Until next time, keep exploring.